Hello, my name is Charles Bernard, and I paint science fiction and fantasy paperback book covers. I have painted many covers, some for famous authors such as Annie McCaffrey, David Brin, Greg Bear, and Lawrence Watt Evans, to name a few. And now I've turned my attention to producing the Art Track video series, which is your alternative to art school, in which I analyze paintings for their design and composition, to show you what the artist did, what went into the making of that painting, by analyzing it and showing how he or she used design and composition to make their illustrations great. Without great design and great composition, there is no great painting. A matter of fact, there is no art without design and composition. That's how important these two subjects are in art. In this Art Track video series, I'm going to try to show you that art is not about subject matter. It is not about how much your painting looks like the subject that you are painting. And it's not about how beautifully you can render something. I'm going to try to show you that art is about form and idea. And once you understand this thoroughly and are able to apply what you will learn in the Art Track video series to your paintings, then you will be well on your way to creating great art. I'll be using some of my own paintings. Also, I'll be doing rough science fiction and fantasy paintings to illustrate various principles of art to you, show you how certain things should be done in composition and design to make your paintings really exciting and interesting to look at, to give them impact. And I'll be using paintings by some of the greatest science fiction and fantasy artists living today, such as Donato, Chris Moore, Jim Burns, Don Maitz, and Fred Gambino, as well as paintings by the great Sid Mead that I'll be analyzing and showing you what he does to make his paintings so stunning, so visually arresting, and interesting to look at. And now, I think it's time to begin.
This is a cover painting that I did for a fantasy story. I thought it was a really great novel. I enjoyed reading it. And what I'm going to be doing is analyzing this painting in terms of the division of space, how I divided the space, and why I divided the space in that particular way. As I jump to different aspects of the painting and analyze them, this part here where it says composition, division of space, is going to change. I'm going to indicate over here the aspect that I am analyzing at the time, so that you'll continually be reminded of what I am talking about. I'm going to change this cover so that the title will not be there. And this way you see more of the painting. It's not obscured by the title. And I'm going to place a tissue paper over this painting to obscure it a little bit, but not so much that you can't see the painting underneath. The reason for this is you'll be able to see the lines that I'm going to be drawing on top of this tissue paper much more clearly. Before you begin your painting, decide on what format shape you're going to be using. Format shape is the shape of the painting. Is it going to be a long rectangle like this, with one dimension being longer than the other dimension? This makes for a more interesting shape than a square. If that's your format shape, then you have equal dimensions all around, and this creates a very boring format shape. I would avoid this shape. Now, as you can see, my painting was done on a more vertical format shape. If you do your painting in this kind of shape, it's a good idea to have the forms within this shape also vertical. It repeats the vertical format shape and thereby strengthens the composition through this repetition. In my painting over here, you can see that the vertical shape is the dragon. Now, you don't have to have all the shapes vertical. There can be some that are horizontal. Like, for example, here, in my painting, the horizon line. It opposes the vertical direction of this long shape. When you're working out your composition within your selected format shape, you need to decide how you're going to divide the space. And in terms of my painting, I divided that space very dramatically by creating extreme contrast of size between these two shapes. There's one large shape and one small one. Now, when you do this, you need to be able to relate the larger one to the smaller and the smaller to the larger. And the way to do that is by repeating some of the color that is in the smaller shape in the larger one. Let's say, for example, this brown. If I have brown here, which I have in my painting at the base here, then you need to repeat some of that brown in the larger shape. And by doing that, you strengthen the relationship between the large one and the smaller shape. Now you can see that in my painting. The brown dragon, that brown, or a variation of it, is repeated at the bottom of the painting, in the rocks here. And also the neck of the dragon. So the brown down here is repeated up here. So the two areas, the large one and the small one, are thus tied together. A stronger relationship exists because of this relationship in terms of color. Design and composition is about establishing relationships within your painting. If you don't have any relationships, you have no art. The great artist Matisse said, "I do not paint things, I paint relationships." And I'm going to show you how to create relationships. And I just showed you one way of doing it by repeating a color. If I change this color in the smaller shape to a strongly contrasting color to the one that is in the larger shape here, then there is no longer a relationship between the smaller shape and the larger one. But if I repeat some of this color at the bottom within the larger shape, now there's a relationship between the larger and the smaller. The more of this color that I repeat within the larger shape, the stronger the relationship between the larger shape and the smaller one. In my painting, the color in the background, in the sky, is similar. It's a variation, similar to what you find in the dragon and at the bottom of the painting. So therefore, a strong relationship between the larger shape and the smaller one is established. A unity exists because of this. I'm going to place the tissue paper over this painting and draw a border and show you exactly how the division looks. See how large this is compared to this smaller shape. Very dramatic contrast in terms of size. And as you can see right here, I changed the title to Design. Size is an element of design. Right now I'm focusing on that element. There are other design elements which I will talk about in later videos. So when working out the composition, decide whether you want the relationship of the shapes to be more harmonious or more contrasting. It all depends on what the mood is that you want to communicate to your viewer. The design principle of harmony. How do I create harmony between shapes? Well, let's say this is your format shape, and you want to divide it harmoniously. Then you should divide it so that the two shapes, the larger and the smaller, are similar in size. Not exactly the same size, and not too much difference in size. This is a harmonious division between the larger and the smaller shape. Now, if I want a division in which the shapes contrast in size, and that there is no harmonious relationship between the two sizes, then I need to make the two sizes extremely different in terms of size, like this. However, if I make the two shapes very close in size, then a conflict occurs. And you have to try to avoid conflict, because that is very disturbing to people. They don't know which is which. Is this larger? Is it supposed to be larger? Is it supposed to be smaller? It's too close. And because of that, there's tension, there's conflict, and it's disturbing to people. So try to avoid that. So when your intention is to create harmonious relationships between sizes of shapes. Make sure that those differences in sizes are clear and not too close. That's a harmonious relationship. And you can clearly see the difference in sizes. But if I made it like this, then they're very close, almost the same. Something like that. Too close. And now I'd like to talk about the design element emphasis. Emphasis is very important because it enables you to draw attention to a particular part of your painting. And that part should be the most important part, which is the center of interest. In this painting, it's the figure. And I'm drawing attention to the figure through color contrast, by creating a strong contrast between the figure and its background. There is contrast through temperature of color, the cool blue on the man and the warm color in the background. And this contrast of temperature helps to focus attention on him. And the fact that the blue appears only on the man and in the mirror that he's holding, not in the background or anywhere else, this isolation of color helps to draw attention to him. The blue is a cool accent in a sea of warmer and more related colors surrounding him. And therefore, the attention is drawn to him. Even though the blue is a contrasting color to those colors surrounding it, it still needs to relate to those colors in some way. You need to have a harmony of color. Even though it's a contrasting color, you can still tie it in with the other colors and create a more harmonious relationship. And the way that is done in this case is through intensity of color and values. By having the values similar, like the dark here and the dark in the background and in the neck and over here, the values are similar. So therefore, you're relating that contrasting color to the other colors through similarity of value, but not only that, also because of similarity of intensity. The intensity of the blue in the shadow is somewhat similar to the intensity that you find elsewhere in the painting, on the dragon, on the rock that he's standing on. So the relationship is strengthened because of this double relationship of intensity and value with the other colors in the painting. This way, the blue is not completely isolated from the other colors. It relates to them, and a more harmonious relationship is set up because of this. In later videos, I'll be talking more about this, on how to bring opposing colors into a harmonious relationship, how to tie them together. One of the most important things you will learn in my videos is that everything in the composition must relate to something else. Nothing must exist in complete isolation. The entire composition must therefore be harmonious. Now, I'd like to talk about the design element color, and specifically color design. Transitional spots. What are they? Well, I'll show you. This is one of my science fiction paintings that I'll use to explain to you what I mean by the transitional spot. It's referred to as a transitional spot because it moves the eye or leads the eye from one spot to the next and to the next, however many spots you have in your painting. You shouldn't have too many. I would limit it to 2 or 3. In my painting, you can see a big spot right here, which is represented by this spot in my diagram. To make things more clear, I have this diagram for you. Then the next size spot is this one here, and then the next size spot is this one. So the eye is led from this spot to this spot, and then up to that spot there. Just as in my diagram, it's led from the large spot to the medium-sized spot to the small spot. This is a way of controlling the eye of the viewer. Now, the spot is used not only to move the eye from one part of the painting to another, but also to draw attention to a particular part of the painting, where you want the viewer's eye to focus, to remain a little longer than somewhere else in the painting. And of course, in my painting, that area is right here, where the strongest and largest spot occurs. The spot needs to stand out from the background, and that means it needs to have strong contrast. Otherwise, it's going to be lost and not noticed. So in my little diagram here, you can see that these spots are clearly seen because they contrast strongly with their background. A blue background and a yellow spot, a light spot in value and a dark value in the background. So they clearly stand out, just like in my painting. You can clearly see these spots. And these spots, they set up a visual line. That is, it's an implied line, not an actual line. Like, see, it creates a line because you're moving from one spot to the next, so a visual line, an implied line is set up. Now the spots, if I place a few spots like this, make them progressively larger, the implied line is like this, you see? So be aware of that. You need to think about what kind of implied line you want to set up. Is it one that looks like this, curvilinear implied line? Or do you want to create an implied line that actually forms a shape, like this? These spots form a triangle. The eye jumps from one spot to the next, and then back down to the larger one, forming a triangle. So you have to decide on what kind of line or shape you want to establish with these spots. Here, it says the transitional spot can lead the eye into and around the painting. In my painting, the eye starts here where the large yellow flame is. This is where the eye enters the painting because it's attracted there first because of the strong contrast. Then it moves to the next spot and then up to the next spot. So the eye is led around the painting from one part to the next by way of these different spots. Continuing with the copy here, it says, the spot sets up an accent that attracts attention. The more the colors, shapes, values, the more the design elements are different between the spots, the weaker the connection. The more they are alike, the stronger the connection. And these spots form what is called closure because they visually connect with each other. So if I made this a square, the connection between these spots has now been weakened quite a bit because they're no longer all circles. There is still a connection because of the color. The same color has been repeated, but it's no longer the same as before. It's a weaker connection, and this is what you try to avoid when creating spots. Try to make them as similar as possible so that a strong connection is formed and the eye will then be easily led from one spot to the next. Now when I say similar, I don't mean that they have to be exactly the same. Matter of fact, it's better if you make them, if you vary them in terms of size and value and even color. Like these spots, for example, in my painting, they vary in intensity of color. This color is much more intense than this color here, and then this color here is least intense. Also, the sizes have been varied. This spot is bigger, this is smaller, and this is smaller. This all of these light spots here, taken into account, is larger than this here. So, in terms of these spots in the diagram, I would darken one of them and then darken the other one even more. So there's actually a gradation of value from a lighter to a darker to an even darker. And this variation helps to create interest in these spots and also helps to focus attention even more on the most important spot, which is here and in my diagram here. Because the contrast is much stronger than in these spots, the attention will then be drawn to the most important part of your painting, which should be the center of interest. As in my painting right here, this is the center of interest. If you have too many spots that are exactly the same, like here, then they compete for attention. That's why you have to vary them in their intensity, in their value, darker, lighter, more intense color, less intense color, so they don't compete with each other. These spots here are still competing somewhat with each other, but not as much as they were before. Now, to lessen the competition between them even more, then you have to make some more changes. Make one of the spots even smaller, and make the other spot lighter, for example. And now you see that this spot here attracts even more attention, and the spots are now competing even less than they were before. I'll make this spot a little larger. So in this case, your attention is drawn here more than to these spots. So the competition is now much less than it was before between these spots. So this you have to keep in mind when planning your spots. Now, if you have only one spot, let's say, one strong accent, the eye, of course, will be led to that strong accent, but it's not going to move anywhere else in the painting. It's going to be riveted on that one accent of color. So by having another color, another spot, the eye now traverses this area and moves to the next spot. So it's moving within your composition. You're leading the eye of the viewer through the composition, through the picture. It's no longer just riveted on this one spot. It's attracted to this spot first because this has the strongest contrast. Then the other spot has a weaker contrast and is seen after the eye looks at this spot, and then it moves to the other one. So it's better to have two or more spots than one strong contrasting spot on which the eye is going to be riveted and not move anywhere else in the painting. If I darken these other accents in my painting, you can see that the eye is pretty much focused right here. It's riveted right there on that strong contrasting color. You can, of course, have a single accent in your painting if that's what you choose. It does create a powerful impact and interest in your painting, but you have to be aware that the eye of the viewer is going to be focused on that one strong accent. And it's not going to move easily to other parts of the painting. It will eventually move to other parts, but not as easily as it would if you had more than one accent, more than one spot leading the eye around. The spots, as you see here, don't all have to be the same color. They can be a different color, and the eye will then still connect them and be led from one to the next. In this case, it's because these colors all have an intensity of color to them, and the sizes are similar. So they have certain characteristics in common, and because of that, the eye connects one with the other, and it is led from one spot to the next. They stand out because of the more neutral colored background compared to their more intense colors. So because of this contrast, the eye is attracted to these spots and connects one with the other and is led from one to the next. Now remember, the more these spots have in common, that is, the more similar they are, the stronger the connection between them will be. In this case, the connection isn't as strong as it would be if the colors were more closely related, more similar. Now, coming over to my painting here, I could change these colors. Make this spot a bright red, and then over here, let me change that to a bright blue. You see how these bright colors or spots stand out against the more neutral background color, just as these spots stand out here against the more neutral background color. And because of that, the eye is attracted to these spots because of the contrast, and is still then led from one spot to the next and to the next. One more word about transitional spots. Over here it says, the underlying shape of the transitional spots should repeat the shapes in the painting. This repetition reinforces the shapes and strengthens the composition. The underlying shapes is something I'm going to talk about in later videos. But for now, what this means is that the shape or line that these spots form should repeat the shapes found in the painting. There's an underlying shape here, which forms a triangle. And then the spaceship forms a triangle, or triangular-like shape. Then over here you have a triangular shape. And then there's one here. And because of that, these spots were arranged to form a triangle, thereby strengthening the entire composition through the repetition of triangular shapes.